Good afternoon, ma'am. We are the Group 4 and our topic in this video is all about categories of children and adolescents literature. Categories of children and adolescents literature is all about literary text that is suitable to the young learners. It helps the learners to gain important knowledge through the context of literature. So, literature in children and adolescents is divided into categories. One of the category is poetry, in which we will going to discuss it in this video. Now, poetry. Poetry refers to those expressions in verse with measure and rhyme, line and stanza, and has a more melodious tone. It came from the Greek word poesis, which means making, because poetry is an expressive way of writing in which authors expresses their ideas, thoughts, and emotion in a meaningful way. Now, to learn more about poetry, let's dig to its divisions and types.
Now we have here the division and the types of poetry. So we have the three kinds of poetry. The first one is the lyric poetry. Second one is the narrative poetry, and the last one is the dramatic poetry. But I will only be tackling about the lyric poetry, and the other two will be discussed by my groupmates. So let's start. So lyric poetry. So as we all know, poetry is expresses in verse, measures, rhymes, lines, stanzas, and tone. It also derives from a Greek word poesis, which means making. So lyric is the words of a song. So lyric poetry in literature in earlier days, it was meant to be sung to the accompaniment of musical known as lyre. So the word lyric is derived from the word lyre. It is a musical instrument. The poem which could be sung to a lyre were known as lyrics in Greek poetry. So also, lyric poetry, it expresses deep personal feelings that he or she cannot show otherwise in prose or any other forms. As we all know, prose is an ordinary language. It is written in sentences, paragraphs, or in dialogues, and it also derives from the Latin word prosa, which means straightforward. So lyric poetry or lyric poem may be sung or accompanied by music with or without a music. So next, we have here the types of lyric poetry. The first one is the simple lyric. So simple lyric, it embraces a wide variety of poems and is characterized by subjectivity, imagination, melody, and emotion. So simple lyric is a simple way of expressing the writer's his or her feelings and emotions. The next one is the song. Song is a short lyric poem which has a specific melodious quality and is intended to be sung. So song is a short poem or story set to music with a melody and vocals. So lyrics, verses is composed of lines, refrain is the chorus, and then the meter is the pattern of a beat. Those four are the main components of a song. So next, we have here the sonnet. So sonnet is a poem expressing of 14 lines with a formal rhyme. So sonnet is all about thoughts or our feelings, and it also have the final line that summarizes the theme. The next one is the elegy. Elegy is a poem expressing lament or grief for death. So elegy is a very sad poem. It is a poem that has a specific pattern and is usually written in couplets. And its emotion being said or being expressed by this kind of lyric poetry is sadness. It is more or less about expressing your sadness because someone has passed away. And then we have the last one, it is the ode. So ode is the most splendid type of lyric poetry. So ode is opposite of elegy. It is more an happy song or happy poem, because it praises or it marks an important event and sung together with music. So that would be all for my part. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I am Purple Margaret po, this is Riza, and I will be reporting about the narrative poetry. So narrative poetry tells a story following an order of events. It is a form of poetry that tells a story, often using the voices of both a narrator and characters. The entire story is usually written in metered voice. So narrative poetry, there are types of narrative poetry. First type is mythical romance. So mythical romance, it is a long rambling love story in verse which is centered around the adventures of knights and lords and the royal ladies during the age of chivalry. So it is a type of narrative poem which typically centers in courtly love, knights and shining armor and chivalric deeds. Next is we have ballad. Ballad is a short, simple narrative poem composed to be sung and is orally told from one generation to another. So it is a popular narrative song passed down orally. Next is we have epic. Epic is a long, majestic narrative poem which tells the adventures of a traditional hero and the development of a nation. It is a long, often book-length narrative in verse form that retells the heroic journey of a single person or group of persons.
Hello, good morning everyone. So I am Abigail Ponteres and I was assigned to dramatic poetry. So dramatic poetry, it has the elements that are closely related to drama because it is written in dramatic form or make use of dramatic techniques. So dramatic poetry also written in verse and is meant to be spoken or acted out, usually to tell a story or portray a situation. Most dramatic poetry is in the form of dramatic monologues, which are long speeches by one actor to another or the audience, or soliloquies, which are one thoughts spoken out loud, regardless of whether anyone hears them or not. So there are three types of dramatic poetry. First is the dramatic monologues. I've mentioned earlier that dramatic monologue is a long speeches delivered by one actor or a single character with few or no interruption at all. They must reveal some elements of the speaker's feelings, thoughts, or motivation. Next one is the soliloquy. So soliloquy is a passage spoken by the speaker in a poem of a character in the play, except that there is no one present to hear him except the audience or the reader. Soliloquy is a speech in a play which the character speaks to himself or herself, or to the people watching rather than to the other characters. So the next and last one is the character sketch. So poem which the writer is concerned less with a completely or implied matters of a story, but rather with arousing sympathy or antagonism for or some interest in an individual. So character sketch is simply means a description or analysis of a certain character, telling the reader about their physical appearance and personality traits. So that would be my part. Next reporter, please.
My topic for today is all about the structural element of poetry. So, here's the structural element of poetry. The first one is verse, one line of poetry. Verse is used to define the difference of poetry and the pose and the line. The second one is stanza, group of verses. Stanza is to divide and organize the poem or the paragraphs function of the poem. The third one is the rhythm. This one is the beats or accented syllables. Rhythm creates a tone for the poem and it can generate emotion or enhance idea. The fourth one is meter, pattern of beats or accented syllables. Meter, it helps the readers to understand the rhythm as it relates to words and lines in poem. The last one is rhyme, syllables that sound similar. Rhyme is the repetition of syllables typically at the end of the verse in the line. And the second one is significance of poetry in children and adolescents literature. First, it helps the children about voice, pitch, volume, and inflection. This one is to aware them the prosodic feature, and it helps to students to improve their voice, pitch, volume, and inflection. The second one is to teach young readers about the speech pattern, because this one is to improve the ability to create media content. That was the importance of speech pattern. Then it helps the children to build up their vocabulary, because one of the most important things is to widen our vocabulary for us to develop the creativity, widen their imagination. Because it is important, because we need to develop our creativity and imagination to create a wonderful and meaningful poem, and to enhance their well-being for us of individual, but also for wider communities and societies as a whole, for us to make a communication and better and to create a wonderful, meaningful poem.
Morning everyone, I will be the next reporter and I am Angel Grace F. Cosmiano. So we already know what is poetry, so let's proceed to the example of poetry. One of the example of the poetry is Mother Goose nursery rhymes. So who was the Mother Goose and where did she live? So in 1697, French writer Charles Perrault first published a collection of fairy tales. It is a popular nursery rhymes that originated in the southern United States. It addressed to a crying baby. So the Mother Goose is a beautiful program for a very young children. Mother Goose means old wives' tale or a short nursery rhymes. So when the babies hear and sing Mother Goose rhymes, these skills encourages cognitive development and memory skills of every children. We also get a value in the Mother Ghost. First, it helps them make a distinction between the sounds in this music, what we call a language. So the Mother Ghost, those are the Wheels on the Bus, ABC Song, and Blah Blah Black Sheep. All nursery rhymes are called Mother Ghost nursery rhymes. We also have The Owl and the Pussycat by E. Lear, and Jabberwocky by L. Carroll, and Life Doesn't Frighten Me by M. Angelo, and The Little Red